when students assemble and everything, they're going to give us a cue. We're going to enter. We're going to enter, and then we're going to take our seats again. Okay. Put them in there, but then I don't want somebody to trip and fall in. We need a shorter walk here. And unfortunately, we're going to be like 10 feet. Good morning, everybody. At this time, I ask that everybody who is able to please rise for the presentation of the colors. Smith Middle High School, I want to extend a very special welcome to all of our veterans and their guests that are able to join us here this morning for this program. Each year, we honor the men and women who have kept America free and secure by serving in the armed forces of the United States. Veterans Day is a fitting tribute to the courageous men and women who are willing to fight for the ideals of other people. In defense of freedom, they have cleared the seas, charged the hills, and covered the skies. They have never let us down. Through their service, our veterans have joined a long line of patriots willing to risk all to preserve our freedom and the American way of life. Many have died in defense of our country, and we cannot measure the value of the freedom secured by their supreme sacrifices. While America can never repay the debt it owes its veterans, we can express our gratitude by remembering their valiant service. Today, I encourage you all to listen and learn about the sacrifices our veterans have made and continue to make for all of us. America's 25 million living veterans deserve our lasting respect and appreciation. At this time, I again ask you to rise if you're able and join our Lady Smith High School concert band in the playing and singing our national anthem.
Before I start, I'd like to thank my father and my papa for their service. In 1921, an unknown World War I American soldier was buried in Arlington National Cemetery. This site, on a hillside overlooking the Potomac River in the city of Washington, became the focal point of reverence for America's veterans. Similar ceremonies occurred earlier in England and France, where an unknown soldier was buried in each nation's highest place of honor. In England, Westminster Abbey; in France, the Arc de Triomphe. These memorial gestures all took place on November 11th, giving universal recognition to celebrate the ending of World War I fighting at 11 a.m., November 11th, 1918. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the day became known as Armistice Day. Armistice Day officially received its name in America in 1926 through a congressional resolution. It became a national holiday 12 years later by similar congressional action. If the idealistic hope had been realized that World War I was, quote, the war to end all wars, November 11th might still be called Armistice Day. But only a few years after the holiday was proclaimed, war broke out in Europe. 16.5 million Americans took part. 407,000 of them died in service, more than 292,000 in battle. Realizing that veterans of World War II and Korea equally preserved peace, Congress was requested to make this day an occasion to honor all those Americans who have served in all wars. In 1954, President Eisenhower signed a bill proclaiming November 11th as Veterans Day. On Memorial Day, 1958, two more unidentified American war dead were brought from overseas and interned at the plaza beside an unknown soldier of World War I. One was killed in World War II, the other in the Korean War. In 1973, a law passed providing internment of an unknown American from the Vietnam War, but none was found for several years. In 1984, an unknown serviceman from that conflict was placed alongside the others. To honor these men, symbolic of all Americans who gave their lives in all wars, an Army Honor Guard, the 3rd U.S. Infantry, the Old Guard, keeps day and night vigil. A law passed in 1968 changed the national commemoration of Veterans Day to the 4th Monday in October. It soon became apparent, however, that November 11th was a date of historic significance to many Americans. Therefore, in 1978, Congress returned the observance to its traditional date. The focal point for official national ceremonies for Veterans Day continues to be the Memorial Amphitheater built around the Tomb of the Unknowns. At 11 a.m. on November 11th, a combined color guard representing all military services executes present arms at the tomb. The nation's tribute to its war dead is symbolized by laying the presidential wreath. The bugler plays taps, the rest of the ceremony takes place in the amphitheater. Every year, the President of the United States urges all Americans to honor the commitment of our veterans through appropriate public ceremonies, such as the one we are holding today.
Good morning. My name is Master Sergeant Levy, and I am so honored to be here today to represent the nearly 10,000 men and women of the Wisconsin National Guard for Veterans Day. Some of you may recognize me. I've had the opportunity to substitute teach for the district, and I've lived in this town for 11 years. Some of you may know my incredible stepdaughters, or maybe you stopped at our house on Halloween to trick-or-treat. But what I don't share a lot, and what a lot of people don't know about me, is that I also serve in the Wisconsin Army National Guard, and I have for over 20 years. If you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me or your awesome recruiter that comes to the school. I'm going to share a little bit about my career with you, but I'd like today to focus more on the rich history of our organization in honor of Veterans Day. On November 11, 1918, the fighting stopped in what was, at the time, the deadliest war the world had ever known. Millions of people died both on and off the battlefield, and four empires, the Russian, German, Ottoman, and Austro-Hungarian, ceased to be. The First World War changed the globe, and was so horrific that it was believed to be the war to end all wars. That's why the ceasefire, which began at 11 a.m. on November 11, 1918, was originally recognized. Thousands of soldiers from Wisconsin's 32nd Division fought on the battlefields of France and Germany until the final moments leading up to the ceasefire in World War I. In the months before, the 32nd earned its now famous symbol, the red arrow, after breaking through every enemy line it encountered. Before the war's end, the 32nd had fought in 4 major campaigns and sustained thousands of casualties in the so-called War to End All Wars. But of course, World War I did not end all wars. And in fact, it sowed the seeds for the Second World War, and the Red Arrow once again played a starring role as it fought in brutal campaigns across the Pacific Theater, ranging from New Guinea to the Philippines and ultimately Japan. Before the war's end, the 32nd had logged 654 days in combat, more than any other division in war. Along the way, these Wisconsin National Guardsmen suffered thousands of casualties, battled disease, and unbearable conditions fighting against a tough and determined enemy. As much as we long for peace and guard our nation to ensure it, we must always be prepared to bring our nation's might to bear against those who threaten our liberties and those of our allies. The Wisconsin National Guard continued that legacy of service in subsequent generations, but that changed a bit after World War II. Especially during the war in Vietnam, the National Guard was rarely sent overseas. After Vietnam, the Pentagon developed a total force policy that included the National Guard as a part of its combat efforts. They learned that when the Guard unit deploys, we bring with us the support of our communities across the nation. As a citizen, soldier, and airman, the National Guard is made up of small business owners, farmers, substitute teachers, nurses, plumbers, welders, moms, and dads, who mobilize when nation calls us to serve. Desert Storm was the first major opportunity to see whether the National Guard members had what it took to serve alongside active duty troops again. It was the first chance to see if the total force concept could work, and it did. National Guard soldiers continued to serve alongside active duty. The sacrifices borne by our nation's veterans from all armed forces paves the way for the freedoms and prosperity that we enjoy as a nation. We may have our differences in this country, but we are truly blessed, thanks to the service and sacrifices of those who have worn this uniform. If you have family members or friends who have served, please take the time today or tomorrow to say thank you. In the years since September 11, 2001, another generation of Americans, like me, answered the call, this time to places like Iraq and Afghanistan, fighting war against terrorism. Here in Wisconsin, more than 20,000 Wisconsin National Guard soldiers and airmen deployed in combat theaters around the globe. And this is where my story begins. I was in 9th grade on 9/11, and we watched the Twin Towers fall from my homeroom class over and over again on the news. I didn't join the Army to be a hero. I joined because I really wanted to go to college and I couldn't afford it. But honestly, at that time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't really know what I was capable of. When I joined the Army, I finally started to realize some of my strengths. They taught me skills that have helped to shape me as a person and as a leader. And after 20 years of service, there have certainly been many hard days. But I still love my Army job. Since I joined, I've been to 6 different countries, a dozen of different states. I've ran 2 half marathons, I've shot grenade launchers, automatic weapons, and driven in up-armored Humvees in blackout conditions with night vision goggles. I've been pepper sprayed, tear gassed, and I did a 26-mile rough march in the sand outside of Fort Bliss. I served with the 32nd Infantry Brigade in Iraq, and I watched the sun rise in the desert every morning for nearly a year. I've spent over 2,000 days in this uniform, and I do not regret it. I'm really proud to wear the red arrow in this uniform. What I love the most is that I can live in a beautiful community just like this one, and still be a part of a larger organization with limitless potential. Over the past 5 decades, and certainly over the past 20 years, we have seen generations of veterans who volunteered to wear the uniform. Every generation of Americans has had its citizens who are willing to serve. They represent the very best of those generations, and are deserving of our undying respect and gratitude as citizens of this nation. It is for this reason that we set aside the day to acknowledge those who put on the nation's uniform and put their lives at risk for the sake of this country, not to glorify war, but to honor those who put their country and their fellow service members ahead of themselves. Because deep down we recognize and appreciate the values and qualities that our veterans possess. Those values and qualities built our nation nearly 225 years ago, and they keep our nation strong and free today. Thank you for honoring this day and allowing me to share this honor with you. one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On September 8, 1892, the Boston Pace, the Youth's Companion magazine, published these words for students to repeat on Columbus Day that year. Written by Francis Bellamy, the circulation manager and native of Rome, New York, and reprinted on thousands of leaflets, was sent out to public schools across the country. On October 12, 1892, the quadricentennial of Columbus's arrival, more than 12 million children recited the Pledge of Allegiance, thus beginning a required school day ritual. At the first National Flag Conference in 1923, a change was made. For clarity, the words "the flag of the United States" replaced "my flag." In the following years, various other changes were suggested, but were never formally adopted. It was not until 1942 that Congress officially recognized the Pledge of Allegiance. 1 year later, in June 1943, the Supreme Court ruled that school children would not be forced to recite it. In fact, today only half of our 50 states have laws that encourage the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance in the classroom. In June of 1954, an amendment was made to add the words "under God." Then President Dwight D. Eisenhower said, "In this way, we are reaffirming the transcendence of religious faith in America's heritage and future. In this way, we shall constantly strengthen those spiritual weapons which forever will be our country's most powerful resource in peace and war." From the time we enter school, we Americans recite the Pledge of Allegiance thousands of times. All too often, however, the words are rattled off in a meaningless manner. But the Pledge of Allegiance is not a bunch of words to be mindlessly repeated. It is, quite literally, a commitment to the country we call home. This is what the pledge means. I pledge allegiance. I promise to be true. To the flag, to the sign of our country, of the United States of America. Each state joins to make a unified country. And to the republic. A republic is a country where the people choose others to make laws for them. The government is for which it stands. The flag stands for the country and its peace. One nation, a single country united in spirit and pride. Under God, people believing in a supreme being, indivisible, the country cannot be split into pieces. With liberty and justice, with freedom and fairness, for all. Each person in the country, you and me. The pledge says we're promising to be true to the USA every time we face the flag and say the pledge. Remember our veterans, both men and women, who sacrificed to protect the freedoms we enjoy as Americans. Please rise and join your country in the Pledge of Allegiance.
That salute as a tradition of being an important part of Muslim examples, but where the tradition came from has seldom been brought to our attention. It is actually a naming tradition that dates back to the time of the Apostles. When a ship arrived at a friendly port, they would have to their cannons by firing, usually 20, to prove they were a peaceful vessel. It soon became a traditional way of announcing peace and was adapted by all branches of the service as a method of honoring peace, both eternal and earthly. As you hear this 21-minute salute in peace, think of the messages given to you today. Please rise for the 21-minute salute in observation of a moment of silence. Following the flag text.
We will be doing our 21-gun salute outside in front of the school. So we'll be heading out there. Middle school, we will ask that you exit the doors underneath the Lumberjacks and Lumberjill sign, follow that sidewalk out. High school students, please go out through the main front entrance and gather near the flagpole.
Lord.